Alright, so this is a follow-up to my first video about the Illuminati. I made that video maybe a week or two, about 2 weeks ago, around the time I first started my research into the Illuminati. And what I've come to discover in the past 2 weeks is that no one seems to know what the fuck I'm talking about, or doesn't seem to want to touch on the subject when I talk about it in real life to people that I know, other than the people that are more closely in my generation or in my age group. And I want to start off by relaying some facts about the Illuminati that I seem to have just kind of sort of stumbled upon and came to the realization that just about everything America has been told since about the 1900s has been complete bullshit. Well, I mean, it even goes back to the Revolutionary War. If you think about it, when it started, one of the main reasons we went to war with England in the first place was we started to print our own money, and their banks didn't like it, especially because they couldn't tax our money because it wasn't the same monetary value as theirs, which is originally one of the main reasons we went to war with England in the first place, to gain our independence. And this is because the Central Bank of England at the time was one that we actually kind of follow now today. This bank, the idea of a central bank, is a bank that loans out money to governments and then controls the amount of currency or the inflation printed in that country. And the way that works is every dollar created comes with an amount of a debt attached to that bill, what that bill is worth in backed gold or backed like whatever. And the problem with that system is every dollar being created now in the American economy has a massive amount of debt attached to each dollar. Like, this started back in 1907 when J.P. Morgan caused mass hysteria by basically telling everyone that his banks were going to foreclose and go bankrupt, and everyone started removing their money from the banks, causing a reformation in 13. You know, the laws. My explanation shouldn't fucking matter of the years, and they shouldn't matter of what went down. The people should already know this fucking information, and if you don't, you need to look it up, because it's just amazing the sheet of lies that politicians and corporate CEOs have been able to pull over the whole world, not even just American public, just the world. I mean, you see that in 1913, when the IRS was created and when the FBI was created and the Federal Reserve Act was created, that the private bank that is the Federal Reserve increased the amount of money circulating in the economy, which increased the amount of loans that banks were giving out, private banks were giving out. You see that these loans get increased with increased interest rates and all this shit because there's extra money just sitting around, so they want to get it out to the public because they believe it's going to be some type of economic stabilizer because of all this bank hysteria that's going on caused by JP Morgan. And just after these laws are created in 1913, 1914, you see in 1920 that bankers start to call in all these loans that were from all this extra money, and it literally causes the Great Depression in 1920. Like, watch the Zeitgeist movie. Watch the Zeitgeist movie, and it'll just all click. Like, you gotta you gotta open your mind, people. You have to get just a little bit in touch with yourself and start to realize that the world is not the way you perceive it to be, that reality is just a figment of your imagination. Your reality is whatever you perceive it to be, not what the government tells you it is, not what corporations tells you it is, not what your parents tell you what it is. It's what you perceive it to be. The Federal Reserve is no more than a private corporation. It makes its own policies. It's a private bank that loans money to a government at an interest rate. How much sense does that make, that every government in the world is going to have an interest rate attached to whatever money it prints? It's the same system that monarchs used when we wanted our independence. Like, it's literally the same fucking system, and they're using the system to scare you with terrorism threats and to scare you with 9/11. It, like, oh my god, you gotta get angry. Like, you gotta have some emotion with what you want in your life, what you want the world to be like. You gotta put some sort of feeling into what you fucking want, because if you don't, then they've won. If you let them, if you let them just control what you think, if you let them control what you do, if you let anyone control yourself other than you, you lost. They've won. I mean, even in 1982, the government commission called the Grace Commission said in 1982 that 100% of what it collects in or in income taxes is solely goes to the interest of these private banks. That the interest that these private banks are charging us is what our income taxes are going to. Our income taxes take up 25% of everyone in America's pay. Every single worker in America's pay pays a quarter of their salary to income tax. Income taxes weren't even voted in as an amendment by the right amount of states. It's come up in multiple court cases that income taxes are illegal, that they're not even supposed to exist. And the sole reason they exist, whether you believe it or not, is to cover for these corporate interest payments, to cover these banks so that they always have their money, that they always get their check no matter what. From the people, from you. You are paying them for nothing, just for being alive. You're a fucking slave. Open your eyes. There's IRS agents that have quit the IRS and refused to pay income taxes because no matter how hard they search, no matter how hard they try to find a law that says you have to pay an income tax, there is none. There is no law or statute anywhere in the American Constitution, anywhere in there's no legitimate law in America that says you have to pay an income tax. There is no law. IRS agents have quit over this and cause so much more like it just makes no sense when you got your own government agencies telling you what you're doing is wrong and you still continue to do it and the people of America are still blind to see what's actually happening. And the way I get into this, all this shit started happening right before all the major wars in the world started happening. You had the creation of the FBI, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve right before World War One. You got the weirdest thing about all these wars that America has been dragged into in the past few years hasn't been. It's not like America's like, yeah, let's go to war. It's not the way it starts out whatsoever. Whatsoever. You see World War One. Nobody wanted to go to war in World War One. We proclaimed neutrality. World War Two, we proclaim neutrality. In World War Three, whatever. The Iraq War, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And people need to start opening their eyes. War just literally causes more borrowing and more interest for everyone in its nation. Like, you just have to open your eyes. You have to see the whole picture. You can't just be thinking, oh, well, this just shouldn't affect me and my life, because it affects everyone. It doesn't just affect you. You gotta be behind the idea that you want a free nation, a nation that, or just a free world. The world operates as one. If you don't realize that, get on the fucking level. Get on the same fucking page. It's like World War One. What happens? We don't want to go to war. All this shit starts happening in Europe, and what happens? German U-boats sink the Lusitania. Well, the Lusitania was already like proclaimed in the news like, get on this boat at your own risk. We essentially sent a fucking boat full of explosives to a war zone full of American people, told them it was a passenger liner, and then let Germans blow it up. The fucking boat was filled with ammunitions. We were going behind the laws of war to make these backdoor gambles to fight for both sides and then enter the war and then win it for which side we felt was going to help us more in the end. World War II, it plays out the same fucking way. Pearl Harbor is a lie. Okay? You look at the way that the American foreign policy was right before we get dragged into World War II, you see that LG Farben and Standard Oil essentially fuel the German economy, like the entire German war effort, and like the bombings of England wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for Standard Oil and John D. fucking Rockefeller. And it's just like you see, Pearl Harbor was what got us into World War II. Lusitania was what got us into World War I. What the fuck do you think 9/11 is? It's just, you see this, if you don't think history repeats itself, you're dead wrong. History has repeated itself throughout time. Oh, it's the exact same way that that Hitler rose to power. He caused fear within his own people to allow his government and his word to stand out and be above everything that the people of Germany stood for. You know, like he let him control their voice. You know, that's exactly what 9/11 was people just getting behind the idea that we all need to stick together, that you know, if these motherfuckers are coming over here and fucking with us, we need to go beat the shit out of them. Like, it's just the way America rolls. Like, anyway, you see that this bank called the Union Banking Corp of New York supplied millions of dollars to Hitler's rise to power, but then was eventually had their bank seized by government agencies because they had millions of dollars in Nazi money in their safes. And who is the vice president and the fucking like CEO of this big bank? Prescott Bush. Prescott motherfucking Bush, the grandfather of George H. Bush, the fucking grandfather of George W. Bush and the father of his father. Like, you don't see this. People just they don't open their eyes. They don't see that everything is fucking connected. That behind every fucking president that we've ever had, there was always a corporate shadow right behind them, controlling everything they do. It doesn't matter if you vote Democrat or Republican because they're all fighting for the same fucking team. The bankers, the industry. Like, oh my god, even the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam was a fucking lie. Like, what got us into the Vietnam War was a fucking lie. You can't let these government motherfuckers scare you into thinking against just thinking against your fellow man. We all have to stick together. You know, even if like I want to be like, it doesn't even matter if this happens or not, because I really don't give a fuck as long as I have some influence on the way your mind thinks, and some type of that little seed of an idea gets planted in your brain, and you start to see all these lies in your world. You just start to look around and start to realize these coincidences that are not coincidences. They actually fit together like pieces of a fucking giant jigsaw puzzle. And you know, I kind of want to be, as much as I want to be the face of this movement, I don't even give a shit about it. Like, I care about the movement more than like anything right now. But at the same time, I don't care if I'm the face behind it. I don't care if I'm, you know, I don't care about the fame or any of that, because what this whole idea has brought me is that fame and fortune brings you nothing but just greed and evil. It doesn't make you a better person whatsoever. The American dream is all a lie. Like, what makes you a better person is not whether or not you smoke pot. It's not whether or not you know, like, you have a shitty job. It doesn't matter if you're $1 million businessman or a fucking garbage man. What makes you a good person is what's inside of you. You know, like, you can't expect people to just give in. Like, I don't understand it, how people can just like walk around every day and not notice these things. I feel like people do notice them and they just don't want to talk about it because they feel weird. But this is me telling you, talk to people, get their perspective, get think about your own perspective and what you think the world is. What Get your own perspective, and always keep your mind free to open things. That always listen to the other side of, like, the story. Always get both sides of the story, because if you don't, you're being biased, and if you're being biased, you're doing the wrong thing. You have to weigh everything out. Otherwise, you're just totally letting these motherfuckers manipulate you into turning you into a slave by your own doing. Like, their goal is to chip you and be able to control you, and as soon as you decide to break from their control, they break you. It's, like, just figure it out, look it up, do one of the things that I've told you. If you have anything to say to me, like, you have any encouragement to maybe start something new, do something else, take this little another step further, maybe collaboration, work with me a little bit, I don't know, I'd definitely be down for something. Just comment, message me. Just, yeah, we're anonymous, and we're coming.